Have you ever attended auditions and wondered why you didn't get booked for the gig? Or ever wanted to be a performer on a movie, TV show, or commercial and don't know where to start? Well, we've got just the episode for you. This is episode 27 called The Unconventional Artist with Anisha Joshi. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Unplugged podcast presented by the Dance Plug Toronto. My name is Roy Urbanozo and I am a former dance studio manager turned dance entrepreneur and advocate. Each week we bring you a dance artist with stories of life experiences working in the industry, opinions about current events, and hot topics in the city. Before we hear from today's guest, here are a few updates that we would like to share. As of January 1st, 2020, the Dance Plug Toronto will be looking to generate revenue for the platform through various channels. Over the past year, we have provided free advertising to many local events, companies, and organizations. With the overwhelming amount of support and the exponential growth of our platform, time and money have gone into making sure that your event is pushed out to a wider audience. The revenue generated on the platform will help our costs to keep the platform running and will allow us to continue to provide resources and services to dancers both locally and abroad. Also in the new year, we will be highlighting and recognizing dance artists, both locally and abroad, for their outstanding work and involvement in dance. More on this in a future episode. Want to advertise on the podcast? Reach thousands of dancers with your event, product, or service. Email us at thedanceplugtoronto@gmail.com for more information. This week, we sat down and chatted with Anisha Joshi. Anisha is a powerhouse dancer, actor, host, and makeup artist originally from Alberta. Her talents have taken her across Canada and the US, as well as choreographing for Royal Caribbean, taking her around Europe. She started EverythingAnisha upon her return and committed to sharing her extensive knowledge about the industry with artists across Canada, and recently leasing her own studio to create an affordable place for creators to do what they do best. Currently, she is the executive director for a nonprofit company in Toronto and spends her time creating content for EverythingAnisha and working commercially as an artist. She can be found dancing in works such as Reebok, Kotex, American Gods, FIFA World Cup, and acting and hosting for Samsung, Dating Unlocked, The Keg Steakhouse, and doing makeup on music video sets across Toronto. Her love of the arts is shown best in her content for EverythingAnisha, and Anisha is also known as the resident guru of the entertainment industry among friends and colleagues. In her episode, she offers some tips and tricks on how you can make the industry work for you. As an artist with a plethora of industry experience under her belt, she also provides some insight as to what it's like to work on set, do's and don'ts in an audition, and how being an unconventional artist who flies under the radar can work wonders for you. I had so much fun interviewing Anisha and cannot wait for you all to hear it. If you're ready, we're ready. So here's the Unconventional Artist with Anisha Joshi. So it's fall in Toronto, and I'm joined by the lovely Anisha Joshi. How are you?
Hello, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan, and I'm honored to be here.
It's great. Okay, so let's get started. Why don't you talk about your journey in dance? Like, how did you get into it?
Well, I have the kind of cliche beginning. I started at 3 years old in a hometown studio in Alberta. Tap, jazz, hip hop, ballet, everything. I was obsessed with it all. Competition. I was the hardcore competition kid, and I saved up. I tried to graduate high school early so that I could leave home and go to Vancouver, pursue my career. It was kind of successful, I would say. I definitely underestimated the amount of money it takes to live on your own. Yeah, I went to Vancouver with about $1,000 in my pocket, which I'm sure you can all relate is basically nothing.
Yeah.
As an adult. So yeah, when I got there, I joined a couple companies. I joined ITP and 247. Spent about a year there. And then I wanted to change directions. So I came up to Toronto, kept dancing, living my life. And then I actually booked a huge job choreographing for a cruise ship. So I choreographed Spectre's Cabaret. I believe it's called Pixels now. It's on Anthem of the Seas.
Oh,
and
very nice.
Yeah, it's a really cool show. Like hip hop, Pansula, there's contemporary, there's point, there's aerialist. It's an awesome, awesome show. One of the best experiences of my life. So I went over there and I spent 8 months in Europe and yeah, I came back here, kept dancing, got into the industry, and here I am. chilling.
Now, throughout that journey, were there any individuals that played a key role in your development?
Definitely. A lot. So many. My hometown studios, like my early teachers, Sherry Urkow, Tracy Sestito, those two are two people that have shaped my entire life as a person, not just a dancer. They've really showed me a lot about how to be a good person in general. And Miss Morgan, who is the director of Edmonton Dance Center, she's a total crazy person, to put it lightly.
In a good way?
In a good way, but also in a very intense way. She was a very intense ballet teacher, but my technique is pretty spot on, and I equate that to a lot of her harshness, perhaps. And then when I moved out to Vancouver, I mean, a huge mentor of mine was Mo Brody, Carlo Atienza, Jerome Esplana, Roberta Bierman, Jonathan Bongato, Alexander Chung played a big role in my hip hop upbringing. He took a big chance on me and asked me to join NXG company when I was 14. So it was a really cool experience. I got to travel around with them and do some competitions. So yeah, a lot of those peeps.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I have so much respect for them.
Cool. Now, you mentioned earlier that you had moved to Toronto to pursue the industry. So let's maybe talk about that. Let's start with like how did you get into it?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I kind of fell into it, but it was always my goal. I really wanted to be on TV, on stage. My original goal was to backup dance. And truthfully now that's like kind of very low on my list of things that I want to do. So it evolved the more that I worked in the industry. But I sort of fell into it just by auditioning, and I came out to Toronto. I really wanted to get signed with an agency. I had connections with Melissa Panton, who's the head agent at the DaCosta Vancouver location. So I harassed Frank and Peter DaCosta out here. And I don't use that word lightly because seriously, I sent my package to them like upwards of 30 times.
Wow.
And yeah, Peter ended up emailing me back and saying, you know, the only reason we're bringing you in for an interview is because you won't leave us alone. So I was like, great. Went in for an interview. I realized why they didn't want to bring me in. My demo reel was like 4 minutes long. My headshot was just garbage, but I had really good references. I had a reference from Melissa herself. And so they took a chance on me. They signed me. Then I went to the cruise ship. I came back and I ended up just starting booking commercials.
Wow. And
that was like a big start for me. Commercials tended to be kind of my most commonly booked gig. It was constantly just commercial after commercial. And so I realized that I really liked being on camera and not just as a dancer. I always thought that dance was the only way to go. I just wanted to perform and groove around, and that was like the go-to. But once I started working in commercials, I realized how much I loved acting and how much I loved just those simple days of being on set where like you have to put down a plate and walk off and you get a good chunk of money. I'm like, great, love that. So fun. So yeah, I started doing that a lot and then just kept auditioning nonstop. Yeah.
You made a couple of great points, and I think you ended up using the word harassing, which obviously like we're not thinking of it in that term.
Not.
But now the question I have is, do you think that people might give it too easy if they're never given that opportunity?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think people are truly prepared for how difficult it is to get started. I mean, I worked as a bartender, a barista, a cupcake baker. I was a courier for a minute. I worked at a jewelry store. Like, I have done so many Joe jobs on the side to be able to pursue my dance career. And there were many times that I could have given up. In Vancouver, I worked until like midnight, 4 a.m. Sometimes as a bartender. I would wake up, I would barista at 6 a.m. I'd go to the cupcake shop after, and then I'd have 3 hours to dance. And so I never really slept. It was really intense. I don't recommend it, but I needed to make ends meet. And there were a lot of times that I could have just thrown in the towel and said, screw it, going to university like a normal person. And I didn't. And it was really, really hard. But after 6 years of nonstop go, 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 I finally was able to say like, screw it, I just want to dance. And it's kind of an interesting story because I found a paycheck that I thought I had deposited, or I thought I hadn't deposited, excuse me. And it was a really big chunk of money. It was about $2,000. And I found this check. I was so unhappy with my barista job. I said, you know what? Screw it. I got this check. I'm quitting. I'm going to be a famous dancer. And so I quit before checking the check, which is not smart. Called the bank. I said, cool, can you deposit this? And they said, oh no, you actually direct deposited that last year. So I had already quit my job. I had no money basically, and none of this $2,000. So I called, I think it was Frank actually. I called him and I said, I just kind of screwed myself. I need to work. Like, let's do this. Like, let's make something out of me. And ever since then, I have never worked another Joe job again. And I've been successfully just working as a performer. So that chance that I took on myself, even though it was kind of accidental, was actually really beneficial for me. And I could have given up, but I just didn't.
Nice. Now, when you had made that initial call to Peter, I think the next question I'm thinking about is like how important is it to really build a rapport, like a relationship with, your agent or your representation?
Extremely important. I can't even place a word on how important it is. A lot of people have an idea that when you start working with an agency or once you get signed, you sit back and you're like, cool, now all these jobs and all these auditions are going to come my way. And unfortunately, that's not true. Especially with DaCosta Talent, they have a humongous roster. They have a lot of people to represent. And although they will always vouch for you and always find the right gigs for you, you need to be really proactive about your career as well and say, if you see an audition listing online that you haven't been called for, you call them and say, hey, can you get me into that audition? Did you submit me? A lot of times they'll have submitted you already and casting has declined it or something like that. But being proactive, and I called them like, oh my God, a million times a month. I called them at least once a week, asking for updates on upcoming jobs, asking for things that I could do, taking acting classes, taking dance classes, getting more footage. That was a really big one for me. I didn't have enough footage. So that was like my main goal. And I had to be super, super on point with taking care of myself and trying to create a career for myself, regardless of the agency. And that shows a lot in how much they'll respect you. And Peter and Frank know how hard I work. And I believe that that's why they work so hard for me, because they see how hard I work for them at the same time. Because it is a partnership, right? It's not one person is higher than the other. Two people are completely equal. You need to treat them as a partnership, as a relationship. And if you're not pulling your end or pulling your weight, then why would they bother? You know what I mean? As harsh as that sounds.
Yeah.
They're not just there to kind of send you jobs and say like, congrats, here you go. It's a little more complicated.
Yeah, no, well, you make a very good point on that. I think, well, relationships, I think, are a huge part of, being able to move forward in any career, regardless. It could be in dance, it could be in, you could work corporate. At the end of the day, it's all about the relationships, right?
Yeah, your reputation is really important.
100%. So most commercials, and correct me if I'm wrong, to my understanding, are non-union.
I would say half and half. I think there is a lot of non-union commercials, but there is also a lot of unionized commercials. The majority of commercials I've booked, I would say it's about 60% non-union and about 40% union. So it's a fairly even playing field. However, it's so much harder to book a union commercial because there's a lot more big fish. You're not a big fish in a small pond. You're a big fish with a lot of other big fish in another big pond. You know what I mean? So they're all very successful people who have all worked before, you can't just get handed ACTRA, right? You do have to work for it. You have to get some jobs beforehand. So I don't know. I think some of my favorite commercials that I booked have been non-union, but the only thing about that is you're not necessarily protected. So I've gotten huge paychecks from non-union commercials, but I've also gotten really, really bad ones. And some of the biggest brands that I've worked for have actually paid me the least out of any.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting when you kind of get into it a little bit. And especially when you're union, you get residuals. You don't get that as a non-union performer. So that plays a huge part. I still get checks from a union commercial that I did 4 years ago.
Wow.
And that is so not only helpful, but just like great. Who's mad about getting $1,000 check every 6 months? Nobody's mad about that. So it really helps because you are protected in that way and your face isn't just being used for the company's benefit, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. Now, for those listening, what's the difference between non-union and union? Let's go. We have to talk about that for a bit.
Definitely. Well, basically, non-union is when you are not represented by a union. So you're just going into auditions that are necessarily open calls. They aren't categorized in a way where you have certain rules. So with a union commercial, it's when you're part of ACTRA, there's SAG-AFTRA in the States. And when you're in that union, you get paid for like a callback. So if I went in for a second audition for a role, I would get $50 no matter what. Non-union, you could go in for 10 auditions and you won't get squat.
Yeah.
So there's certain things like that. There's also, they have to pay for a certain amount of usage. So when you're in a union commercial, you get maybe a year of usage. So you get that pay. And if they want to renew it, they have to call you and say, hey, well, they don't call you, but like they email your agent and say, we're going to reuse this commercial. Here's another bunch of money. And you get used in a more financially stable way because they're actually paying for the use of your product and the use of your, the only thing I can say is face. They're using your face on camera. So That kind of stuff is a really big difference. As well as being in a union, you do have to book a certain number of union jobs to be able to join it. So with ACTRA, it's 3 jobs. Once you book 3 jobs with ACTRA, you can become a part of the union. And non-union, you can audition as much as you want. However, when you're in non-union, you can work union jobs. That's totally fine. They have no problem with that. When you're in a union, you cannot work non-union jobs. So there are pros and cons to that, because once you've joined ACTRA, you can't do any of those big non-union commercials. And although some of them are crappy pay, some of them are really, really big. I remember Coca-Cola did a non-union campaign here a few years ago, and it was like $20,000, and you got flown to New Zealand.
Wow.
Which is like pretty awesome. But you can't do that if you're an ACTRA.
Yeah.
So there is kind of ups and downs about it.
Gotcha. What do you find works for you whenever you go into auditions for these types of gigs?
Confidence. Yeah. That's like the biggest one I could say. And not acting like an amateur, even if you are. So if you go in there and you're like, hi, I'm really nervous, like, you're just going to sound a little bit silly. You want to go in there and be really, really friendly. Reputation is everything. I have gotten really amazing opportunities based on clients and stuff that I've worked with in the past. My very first commercial I ever booked was for Optimum Cable, and I worked with a guy named Benji Weinstein. He's an incredible director in Canada. Not related to that whole thing, in case you were wondering. But he's amazing, and he does all these big commercials now in the US. And I worked for him. We had such a great time on set. We built such a great relationship. And about 4 years later, I was auditioning for a Priceline commercial, and I went in for a non-speaking role. And a non-speaking role, silent on camera, is great money, don't get me wrong. But if you're speaking, it doubles, triples, it goes a lot higher. So I went in for this audition. He recognized me. He said, hey, Anisha, which I was like mind blown at. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, he remembers my name. And I ended up basically getting a callback for a completely different role that was a speaking role. And I don't know how much I can like assume about it, but in my personal opinion, I think he brought me in for a speaking role because A, he was kind of tossing me a bone of like, here you go, let's bring you in something a little bit better. And I ended up booking that speaking role, which was an astronomical amount more than the silent on camera role that I would have got. So I do think that plays a part in it.
Nice. You made a good point earlier about, going in confident, but I think one thing that I thought about was something as simple as the initial slate when you go in.
Oh yeah.
You walk into the room and you're put in front of a panel. So most, if not all auditions ask you to obviously state your name and then maybe a couple things about yourself, right? How does that slate set the tone for the rest of the audition?
Well, how come nobody says hi in their slates, first of all? That drives me insane. It's so weird to be like, Anisha Joshi, represented by DaCosta Talent 5'7". You know, like it's so uncomfortable. Nobody talks like that. So I always say hi. I always say, hey, I'm Anisha, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's actually a really big thing to remember because not only are you appearing as friendly, they'll know that you're going to be easy to work with, not a total a-hole on set. Like it just creates a really nice tone. And I mean, I'm a very friendly person. I'm a bit of a jokester. So like I'll make jokes or something when I walk in to try and make the panel laugh. Not like my actual intention. It's kind of just my personality. Yeah. But having a really good attitude when you walk in there, especially during your slate, is huge. If you slate like a numbnut with like a monotone voice, how is that going to make anybody want to work with you or even be your, pal, right? If you go and introduce yourself and you're like, hey, I'm Anisha. It's just like so low and just like monotone, and it doesn't get anybody excited about what they're about to see.
In addition to commercials, you've also done some TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I have indeed.
So why don't you talk about your experience working with, various choreographers, and, maybe give our listeners an idea of maybe what it's like to be a dancer on a show or on set.
Yeah, it's probably not exactly what you'd expect. As if you're doing a really big dance scene in something where it's an actual group, it's like a big choreography, something, then it's fairly similar to maybe your average rehearsal for a show. You'd have like a 9 to 5 rehearsal. You're working all day. You're working on this thing. And then you go to set, and this is where everything changes. probably half of the dance is going to get cut. You're going to need to do it 30 times from 10 different angles. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to have to sit down for 5 hours and then stand up and dance right away. You don't got time to warm up. You got to stay warm. They'll toss you in colds. Half the time they'll ask you to do something completely different and just expect you to know how to do it. So I think it's important to remember that you have to be very malleable as an artist when you're working on sets, no matter what. It's a lot more changes coming your way because directors and producers that aren't artists or aren't dancers, I mean, they're artists in their own way, but they're not dancers necessarily. They don't really understand that by, saying, hey, can you do a big kick and hold your leg for 50 seconds after you've just been sitting down for 10 hours? They don't understand that that's going to be hard. So you just got to be like, yep, okay, cool, sounds good. If I pull a hamstring, I'll ice it tomorrow. And it's not necessarily the best part, but it is very exciting because then you see it a little bit later. So that's definitely like the biggest part, is being really malleable and understanding what a strong difference it has from stage to camera. And facials are a huge, huge thing. I couldn't understand for a long time why I wasn't booking TV work. I was constantly booking stage work. And every time I went in for an audition, I would make it all the way to the end, but I would just never quite book it. And it was actually Addie Chan who gave a correction to Peter and said, hey, you got to tell that girl to calm down her face because she is not performing for the back row. Like, the camera is right there. You don't need to have these big facials that, normally when you're on stage, you have to like project and be gigantic. When you're on camera, it's completely the opposite. You need to be a little bit more subdued and a little bit more within yourself because the camera is going to pick it all up. It's going to see everything.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go so over the top because you're not projecting anywhere. I mean, it's like 3 feet away from you. You know what I mean? So understanding the difference of where your big, powerful movements should be and where more internal movement should be is a huge part of it, especially with eyeline. I mean, looking slightly to the right can completely change a scene. Looking slightly up can completely change your whole persona. And using those really tiny details is how you become really successful on camera. If you're constantly really big and unwilling to change a little bit and unwilling to take corrections, you won't find a lot of success as an on-camera performer.
Speaking of that, did you have any acting experience prior to doing these auditions? And, how camera ready were you really?
Oh, God. I mean, I acted in my high school play. But other than that, actually not a lot. I booked my first commercial and it felt really natural. And I know that's like not the best advice ever, but to be a really successful actor, it has to come from a natural place. And I always felt like I just wanted to be myself. And I think I found it most hard to do roles that were completely opposite from me. One of my first big acting jobs, it was a very intense scene, and I had to find a friend who had just gone through a really traumatic experience. And I had to cry in the scene. I had to be all, waterworks. And I was terrified. Like, I hid my face for the whole thing. I just put my head down and pretended to cry because I was so nervous. I didn't have a great understanding of how to portray that. And so I realized that once again, it has to come from a natural place. Mm-hmm. So I found it a lot easier to play these bubbly, happy, outgoing roles because that's who I am. So I just pulled from who I naturally am. Whereas when you have to switch, you have to find that within you or find some sort of situation in your life that made you feel like that, or really just watch a bunch of shows that you see somebody acting like that and try and kind of really take it in. And then you'll be able to really portray it, because my acting experience was very low when I came out here. It was basically nothing. And I think dance on its own is some sort of acting with your body. I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. But, my musical theater experience and all that kind of stuff, that was really the only acting experience I actually had. Most of it was learned on set.
Did you take any acting classes to build on those skills?
Yeah, I have taken a few. I took a class with Nadine White back in Vancouver, which I really enjoyed. My problem with acting classes is sometimes they were just a little intense and a little bit Not all of them. I'm actually in the middle of doing the incubator project in Toronto. I would highly recommend it. It is an incredible program because you actually get footage at the end. So you film an entire scene or an entire like kind of short film, and it's professionally shot. It's a brand new script that's created for you, and you get something that you can use in your demo reel, which
Very
is
nice.
huge and so important. So far I've really, really been enjoying that. But my problem with some acting classes is you really have to find the right one for you. Some of them are crazy and you're like, what in the actual hell is going on? This is like nuts. So some of that can be a little up and down. I think the best thing to do is to ask people who have a similar experience as you or a similar kind of goal in their career and ask them what classes worked for them. Because if you go to the one that's the most popular, it could be completely wrong for you. And it might be popular for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
To do a lot of research, if you have a connection with an agency, ask your agent and they will tell you the right ones for you.
Nice. Now, one thing that I've noticed, we've known each other for a bit, but it's funny because you have your own YouTube channel, which we'll talk about later on. So you get yourself out that way, but on a professional note, industry note, not a lot of people might know about you, right?
Yeah.
So how
stay a little behind the scenes.
and I mean, how has that worked for you? Like, how has that really benefited you, right? Do you think that things would have been different if you may probably put yourself out there a little bit more, or are you content with being under the radar and still getting the work that you're getting?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was I wanted to focus on myself. And, for the real tea is I was bullied relentlessly my whole life. I had it pretty tough as an artist and as, in school and in dance. I just could never find a place that I fit in. Sometimes it would be because I would do a move really good and people would hate me for it. And I didn't quite understand why. And I'm always very outgoing, which can be fairly intimidating sometimes for some people. So the biggest reason, truthfully, that I stayed away from a lot of people out here in Toronto was because I was afraid. I was afraid of making friends. I was afraid of not being liked. And that led me to just really focus on myself and keep my path very narrow and exactly what I wanted to do. But actually, I think it was the best thing for me because I would go to a class and I'd be wearing a 247 hoodie and they'd be like, hey, where'd you get that hoodie? Are you in 247? Or like, can I get one? And I was like, oh yeah, I was in it. And people would be like, wait, what? Why don't I know who you are?
Yeah.
Or something like a Kotex commercial that I filmed, with Tanaya years ago. And everyone was like, who's this random girl with Tanaya? But I mean, not to toot my own horn, little did they know, I had been working for years. I had been doing tons of commercials. And so it helped me understand the real goal, and it helped me stay really humble because I'm not doing this to impress anybody. I'm not doing this because I want everybody to dote on me and say like, oh my gosh, you are so successful and yada, yada, yada. I just don't care because I need to understand it and believe it myself. And I need to have my own self-love and my own support system to be a successful human, not just as a dancer, just to be a happy person in life. And relying on, the compliments and the whatever being right in the industry, relying on that from other people to make you feel good will never make you feel good. It's just going to create a bigger cup to be filled. And unless you can fill it yourself, you won't ever feel confident or happy with where you are. And so, yeah, stepping away from the industry was the best thing I ever did. And it's kind of great when people are like, oh, who are you? And then I work with them on set and they're like, oh, hey. And I don't know. I find it really interesting how since I've become a little bit more well-known in the industry, people treat me differently. And people that treated me really crappy years ago are very nice to me. And it's made me realize a lot about who the people are that I want to spend my time with and who the people are that are worth me hiring and bringing on for gigs, because your reputation is everything. You don't know who's actually big. And truthfully, some of the biggest stars, you could say, or celebrities that I've worked with, there are some huge, huge egos, but the biggest ones are the nicest people. They are the most humble. They are the ones that come around and say hello to you. And those people have bazillions of dollars in the bank. They've worked a million movies, They don't have any reason to prove anything. And that's just something that I always wanted to stay true to. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. You want to know who I am? You want to follow me on Instagram? I hope that it's because you like my content. I hope that it's because you want to learn about the industry, not because you've heard about me from 10 people, not because you think I'm good looking, not because you think I'm funny. I just want you to be there because you appreciate who I am as a person.
And for those listening and probably questioning, oh, why is Roy interviewing her? That's your answer right there. Do you think that people who do what you do have very similar lifestyles, who live under the radar?
No. Sometimes and sometimes not. I think it depends on the person. I do see a lot of people pursue a very public appearance about certain things, but I will say this, and I don't say this lightly, the people that work the most are not the people looking for recognition. They are not the people searching for a giant group of friends. They are not the people posting #booked and blessed. I'm sorry. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. It's kind of just a little bit of a, I don't know. It's a very, truthfully, it's kind of a mean thing to do, posting and saying like, oh my God, I just booked this thing, like yada, yada, yada. It's great to be proud of yourself. And it's great to talk about, you know, just saying like, oh, I'm super proud of myself. I just booked this thing. But when you're posting it or talking about it as a way to prove yourself to other people, that kind of just shows that you're not working that much.
Yeah.
And you feel the need to prove yourself constantly. And I know that's kind of harsh to say, but you shouldn't be calling people and saying like, hey, did you hear back from that gig? Like I did. Like that sucks. That is such a mean thing to do. Because I try to forget about gigs as soon as I audition for them. I leave the room and I'm like, nothing ever happened. What do you mean? I'm going to go get a coffee. You know, it's like the best thing to keep my mental health in check.
Yeah.
But it's also just sort of an FU to like, hey, look, I just booked it. Did you? And it's kind of just not a nice thing to do. It's not a nice way to present yourself. And I hate this word, but a lot of times people look very desperate. And that sucks. It's not a way you want to be perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think sometimes the most successful people are the ones under the radar, truthfully. Not always. There's a lot of really successful people, but the amount of followers you have on Instagram does not equate the amount of jobs you do, because the things you post on Instagram, if you're posting dance videos all the time, no shade, it's amazing. I think it's awesome to create content for yourself, but those aren't videos you necessarily got paid for. Those dancers in the back didn't get paid for it. If you're front and center and you have 5 dancers behind you, how did you get those dancers? Did you, kind of bribe them on saying like, oh, you get to be on my big Instagram and you'll be in my video, but like they're in the back. Truthfully, nobody looks at the people in the back on Instagram videos. You look at the person in the center, unless they're like killing it in the back and you're like, check out that girl,
Yeah.
But I do think that people have a false idea, especially with social media nowadays, saying that if I have more followers, people will take me seriously. And the best way to take somebody seriously is to start with yourself. As soon as I started taking myself seriously, other people started taking me seriously. Because if you don't if you don't view yourself as a boss ass whatever, then nobody else is going to.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fake it. It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
You just sound a little crazy.
Personal versus professional.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. So I think a lot of people don't know this, but you also cast dancers.
I do, yeah, fairly often. That's a big part of my platform. I try to always bring on new dancers and new artists because I believe that experience does not always equate greatness. So I do always try to bring on new people, and it's very interesting when you cast and somebody messages you on Instagram and says like, hey girl, like pick me. I'm like, I will absolutely not pick you just because of that. And I have some of my closest friends, some of my absolute ride or die best friends send me a business email with their demo reel, headshot, and resume attached and say, hey Nisha, please find my materials attached, yada, yada, yada. That shows so much respect for the difference between business and friendship, because if someone is your true friend, they will not disrespect you by saying like, hey, pick me, because that is a very truthfully ballsy thing to do. It doesn't make you look good. It makes you look really unprofessional. It makes you look like a mooch in a weird way and a bit of a social climber. And that's not how you want to be perceived either. You want to be seen as a respectable, entrepreneur, because that's what artists are. They are their own entrepreneurs. They create something to offer. And if you're not offering anything in a business way, nobody's going to want to buy it, because that is just the way of business. You have to have a very strong understanding about the difference You know, I have friends who email me that truthfully could text me and say, hey, I'm available for that, and I wouldn't mind. But those people are the ones that don't text me. They're the ones that email me. And the people who do personal message me on Instagram, like I'll say this right now, I'm so sorry for anybody who has done that, but I absolutely would not cast you because of that reason, because it's just like rude.
And
you know, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, and unprofessional.
Yeah, it's not nice. Go away. I don't have time to go look at your Instagram.
Yeah.
Or send me an email saying like, check out my Instagram if you want to see me dance. I don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I am busy. I'm going through my emails. I don't want to go search you up on Instagram and see your class videos and freestyle videos. Like, send me a demo reel, be a professional, and like do what I asked.
Yeah.
Or like people who will reply to castings that have the date and time on it. And then I'll book them. And then later they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't available for that date. And you're like, did you read it?
Yeah.
Or messaging and asking for more information. I don't always mind that. But if I had more information, I would put it on the casting call. I promise everyone that. I would put it on the casting call. I don't need to post like, it's this event at this place and this place. Like, unless I have it, I'm not going to tell anyone. Like, I put all the information that I have. So don't message me and say like, hey, I just need some more information about this to know if I can submit. No, you submit or you don't. If you're not available that day, great. Don't submit. Like, big whoop. There's other jobs, you know? Don't make me go out of my way to treat you special and tell you all these like intricate details about a gig that you truthfully have no right to know. That's kind of harsh, but like, it's true. I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
I've put what I put out. You reply or you do not. Simple as.
When you get these people apply for your gigs, you know, how much time goes into maybe screening?
Oh, a lot. More than people think. I can be a little bit harsh when it comes to casting. I will say that. You know, if somebody sends me a 4-minute demo reel, a lot of times I won't even bother watching it. You know, if somebody sends me a downloadable video link, that's getting deleted immediately. If somebody sends me missing info, like if they send me an email that doesn't have one of the things that I asked for, delete it immediately. And that is really harsh, but it is for time. Like, I will get, generally for each casting call, I get between, you know, 50 to 100 responses sometimes. And that's a lot of people to go through. So you have to be very selective, because not only if I see that you haven't gone out of your way to send me what I've asked for, that just shows that you're not going to go out of my way or go out of your way to do what I'm asking of you. So it shows a lot about a person, and shows a lot that I don't really want to work with them until they are ready to give me exactly what I'm asking for. And it's so funny because I'm very nice in life, but as a casting director, I am very harsh. Like, I just don't have time for it. I'm so busy. Everybody knows what it's like being an artist. You work every single day nonstop. So you don't have time to be chasing after people asking for certain materials. You don't have time to be watching 5-minute long demo reels. Like, I don't have time for that, you know?
Yeah.
Especially if I'm casting for a hip hop gig and you send me a contemporary reel. Girl, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Any sense at all. If it's really good, maybe I'll save it. But generally it takes a good few hours to go through that kind of stuff. So you have to be pretty precise and maybe a little bit harsh when it comes to that.
Cool.
Sorry, I sound so mean. Oh my gosh.
No. Hey, upfront, and
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with
honesty is something I very much believe in.
Yeah, but I also don't think that'd be any different from any other casting director too.
Definitely not.
Right? Like, and I mean, the volume of people that they deal with are probably
astronomically more than me.
Yeah, 10 times more.
Yeah.
Right. So
definitely. I mean, look at my experience with Peter and Frank DaCosta. I sent that resume a bazillion times and they didn't care because my reel was 4 minutes long and my headshot was garbage. So like, why would they bother? They get hundreds and hundreds of submissions every single day. So if you're not sending it on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, you're probably not even going to get seen. And if you're sending it as some sort of package with nothing attached to it, it will just get deleted right away because they don't have time for it. So you have to be really conscious of the fact that like these aren't people who are just sitting around like excited to get these casting emails, you know, like they're busy people with stuff to do.
Yeah, 100%. Let's switch it over to Everything Anisha.
Everything moi. That's me. Yes. Yeah, Everything Anisha is an online platform that I created a few years ago. So I noticed that there was a huge lack in the industry in terms of education. And I do believe that there are wonderful ways to get educated as a dancer, as a performer. but not the real stuff. Not about stuff like what exactly to do to get to auditions, whether you should join a union, how you should prepare for auditions, how you should dress for them, how you should do your makeup for them. And I think it's like, it was such a big gap. I just noticed that nobody was sharing information, and it's like this weird, like, this is my secret thing, like, don't tell anyone. But I've always been a really big open book, and I noticed that I had a lot of qualities that turned out to be very successful when I was auditioning. You know, my confidence is definitely the biggest one. I noticed that people are very introverted when they go into auditions. I've noticed that people will wear the most ridiculous things. I did an audition one time that had a very specific wardrobe call. The picture attached was insane. It was colors on colors and crazy makeup and crazy hair. It was so over the top. And I showed up there wearing like red and fishnets and leggings and jerseys and like a fuzzy jacket, and like I had a braid on the top of my head and green lipstick. I went crazy. And I was like, I stuck out like a sore thumb. People showed up wearing like everyday clothes. And I was so confused and surprised, because I'm like, what in the hell? Like, did you read the same email that I did? Am I going crazy? Like, wait, am I at the wrong audition? And after experiencing that, I just had a really strong inkling to create something that's a safe place for artists to go and basically find out exactly what they need to know about the industry that's not information that's readily available. And I wanted it to be a very safe place so that people felt comfortable reaching out and asking questions if they need to. I love talking to people. I noticed a lot that people from home or friends of mine would constantly reach out about questions for auditions or questions about this gig or random questions like that. And I sort of became this kind of confidant for a lot of people to understand what certain things meant. And that's why I started it. That's why I created it. It's a YouTube channel. You can go check it out. It's pretty sick. And yeah, I post a lot on my page as well, my Instagram. You know, I put a cheesy caption at the top so you can like scroll past if you really want to. But if you click on the See Mores, every single post has some sort of story attached to it, whether it's about mental health, whether it's just a stupid story, whether it's about surviving rehearsals, auditions, you know, behind the scenes of costumes and gigs and all that kind of stuff. That is information that people are genuinely interested in and artists don't actually know until they've been working in the industry a long time. And so I wanted to share that because since I've been working pretty successfully for a long time, despite what people might think, I am, you know, pretty well versed in what to do. To put it lightly, to put it kind of specifically. I just know what to do for the most part. I'm still learning, of course, like everybody keeps learning. Every time I do a new gig, I learn something new. I generally share it right afterwards.
Nice.
So yeah, it's pretty eye-opening.
That's great. One thing that I do want to talk about was, you know, your point on, I guess, people keeping their things secret. Do you think that, you know, that stems from maybe the fear of them maybe not being able to book as much anymore? Right?
Definitely. I think you've nailed it right on the head. I do believe that people keep their certain quirks or certain things that they know about the industry. They do keep it to themselves because they believe that if I share this with somebody, they're going to do that and then I'm not going to book. But I'll tell you one thing. You will book that job, whatever the case may be. You will book it for the dumbest reason. You will book it because you are an inch taller than the other person in the room beside you. You will book it because you have brown hair instead of blonde hair. You might book it because you have ballet training, even though there's no ballet in the commercial. There's certain things that go into casting that have nothing to do with who you are. And these tips and tricks can really help you be more confident about your auditioning, can definitely better your chances as appearing as a professional and creating gigs for yourself. But truthfully, no matter what, if you're not right for the gig, you're not right for the gig. And a lot of times the things that I generally share are stuff like dressing for the audition, because, you know, if you're auditioning for a robot, okay, it's some sort of robot movie, and you walk into that audition room and you are dressed as a robot. You are like silver face, like Tin Man vibes. You are so robot ready and nobody else is looking like that. Whether or not you look like the right person, the casting director is going to be like, hey, that looks like a robot. You might be perfect. So that kind of stuff can really increase your chances. But at the end of the day, if you're the wrong height, you're the wrong height. Sucks to be you. Whatever. You can't grow. I mean, I guess. But like, you know what I mean? It doesn't really, there's so much more that goes into it than just tips and tricks. So there's really no point in keeping that to yourself because it's not going to make you any better or worse. You're still going to book it or you're still going to not.
Yeah. That's a great point, I think.
Definitely.
And there's so many variables that come into play. And it's funny because we had this talk I think last week, and I did my first audition obviously,
Yes,
and
I remember
such
this.
a long time that I completely forgot what it was like to even
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
do one. So my question to Anisha a couple weeks ago was, hey, I received this email with the subject heading casting hold, and I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah.
So I asked her what it was. And I was surprised to even get the answer that I did, because, when you go into auditions without any expectations, and I think you made a good point. I think those are the best, usually those are the best ones. Usually
Definitely.
right?
Yeah, when you have nothing on your radar of like what's going to happen, those are the ones that you're generally the most successful at. Especially with something like a casting hold. I mean, I think a lot of people put so much stock into that. And it is such a huge thing to be put on hold. Like no matter what, you could get dropped off hold. You could book the commercial. It doesn't matter. But being put on hold is a really huge thing, because it means that the casting really saw you, really liked you, and put you at the top of their list, or what we call a short list. So it's basically like, your top 5 or something like that of people.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether or not you book the job, it's great. But some people, unfortunately, will post and be like, "Ooh, I got this gig," and then 5 seconds later, you're off hold, and so like. That sucks. I mean, my sister and I had a really hilarious experience a few years ago where we were flying to the Dominican Republic with my family. We had this whole trip booked. We were really excited. And then, of course, her and I auditioned for jobs right before, and we both got put on hold for these 2 jobs that were right in the middle of our family trip. And we were so upset because we're like, oh my gosh, we've been planning this forever. And her and I started planning our flights. We said, okay, well, we can switch this flight here. We can switch this flight here. And I think that it's because we did that. Neither of us booked those jobs. So after all of that, after all this like pre-preparation, we didn't book it. And so that expectation is what I believe led to us not booking it. Maybe not, there's obviously other factors, but when you put so much stock into it, you probably won't book it if you forget about it, and then you get that phone call. It's like the best surprise ever. You're like, oh my gosh, I even forgot that I auditioned for that. Great. How fun, So having that understanding, I think, is really helpful.
That's awesome.
That was a great response I got there from you. I was so excited when you messaged me. I was like, oh my gosh, Roy's asking a question. So fun.
I was expecting,
so happy.
I thought you were like going to respond and be like, oh my God, that's so cute.
No, not at all. People don't know that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
nobody really knows. And I have no judgment for people who don't know anything, because it's very confusing. This industry is so confusing. It makes no sense. So that's the biggest reason why I try to keep my Instagram such a safe and real place, because everybody should feel comfortable asking any type of question. There are no stupid questions. And when you actually posted something about the questions on Dance Plug and talking about which questions you should never ask, I disagreed with a lot of them, because I actually think that there are no stupid questions.
They're all valid. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Any question is valid, because if you don't know, you should ask instead of keeping it to yourself and trying to figure it out, because that sucks. Probably will figure out the wrong thing.
I think we're in the home stretch.
Fun.
Okay, I do want to get your opinion on something. So a hot topic in the city right now is that it can cost up to $28 to take a drop-in class in the city.
Oh, man.
Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts are harsh, so I won't say my completely true thoughts, but I'll put it lightly. I think it's ridiculous to expect a community that doesn't get paid well. Case in point, we do not get paid properly as artists. If you're in a union, you get paid properly. There's less jobs in the union. Not necessarily less, but they're harder to get. If you're not in a union, you get paid like crap. You do a music video and you're on set for 16 hours and you're getting $200. Like, that sucks. That's not a good payment. It's great to build your resume and do whatever. But for places of establishment, like, how can I say this? For any type of place that serves artists, for them to expect that kind of money from people who can barely afford to live based off their income is quite frankly disgusting. I think it's gross. I think it's just the dumbest thing in the entire world, because not only are you not even paying your teachers well, you're expecting people to cover your lifestyle and to pay for everything that you want in life, when in reality, the whole point of the dance community, in my opinion, is to share and to grow and to help each other. And this is a big reason why I started EverythingAnisha Studios, which is kind of exciting. I just got my own studio, and I created it because I felt there was a lack of affordability in terms of spaces for artists. If they want to hold a workshop, why should they have to pay $50 an hour to get this nice space and barely break even on these people coming to their class? And that's a lot of the times why those prices go up. And for an established place to charge so much is just lame. It's just lame. You know, like, why? What are you doing? What are you getting out of that? You're not bringing anything to the community. All you're doing is creating a stronger idea that people won't go to drop-ins. Why would you go to drop-ins if you can't afford them? I mean, I don't take a lot of class, and you know, I have my own issues. I have major class anxiety, which is something that's like totally different. But at the same time, a big reason why I don't go to class, or I haven't gone to class for a long time, is because of the price. I don't want to pay $30 to take from some teacher that doesn't even, quite frankly, deserve that. There are teachers in this world that I would pay $50 to go see. Absolutely. There are many that are absolutely worth it. And I think $30 is not a bad price to play for something like a master class or a workshop or something where you're getting a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for an everyday drop-in by a teacher who doesn't have a lot of experience, that is just bringing kind of an average dance class to the table. And that's no shade to anybody. You know, there's a market for that and it's important. But unless that teacher is like extremely established, I know I like their class, I know I like their choreography, I'm not going.
Yep.
There's just no point to that. Yeah, to put it lightly.
That's great. Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know. I think really building Everything Anisha is something I'm super passionate about. I focused a lot on the numbers when I first started, and it was frustrating because I don't get a lot of views. You know, I don't have an obscene amount of, you know, my videos don't go viral because they're very real. They're about information and that kind of stuff. Part of it is because I do stay quite separate from the industry, and that's my own choice. But I never started it because of that. So I had to go through this whole experience of, okay, I'm not doing this for the numbers. And, you know, the 100 or so people that watch it, like, they send me messages, they send me emails. I've gone to many auditions where people have been like, hey, I've seen your video. And it's so amazing and heartwarming, and it makes everything worth it. Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, I think my main focus is definitely building Everything Anisha Studios and creating a huge community for artists that is actually safe and beneficial and, you know, holds casting calls and wants to cast different people and not just their friends, mm-hmm. and has a studio that artists of any type can go. You know, my studio has a self-tape center, so there are, you know, a little couple backdrops for people to go in and film self-tapes with. Mm-hmm. It would be me reading with you. We have male readers that can come in and read with you. It's open for, you know, musical theater rehearsals. I'm working on creating a recording booth for singers and podcasts.
Nice.
And all that kind of stuff. And so my goal has always been to create something different and to keep true to my integrity as a person. So with all that, Everything Anisha is a huge goal of mine, to really make huge and giant and stay true to the original goal. Alongside that, you know, I'd love to book a few more movies because that's fun too. So definitely continuing to work as a commercial artist, because not only is that like my love and my passion, it's where I get from my information to share with Everything Anisha. So if I'm not working as a professional artist, I have less information to share. And a lot of the stuff that I do post about is stuff that's happened within the last couple of weeks. You know, like I'm constantly sharing true information about what's going on in the industry and what's going on in my life. And I need to keep working towards that. And yeah, so that I can keep Everything Anisha a really real and safe, beneficial place.
Mm-hmm. If you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
Oh, don't worry so much. Don't worry about what people say about you. I had some really terrible things said about me for very many, like a lot of years, you know. It shaped who I am as a person. And it was really important for me to grow. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting like emotional, but it's been really eye-opening now as an adult and being secure with myself and understanding that I am good enough and I can do what I want and I don't have to do what everybody says that I have to do. Mm-hmm. And I thought I had to follow this certain path to be successful. You have to do this, you have to do this, you know, the only money is in Broadway, like that kind of stuff. And until I realized that I could trust myself and believe in myself and put my own worth at the top of my list, I was unhappy. I was very unhappy. I went through a lot of mental health struggles. And, you know, I always work on myself constantly because I need to stay true to that. And so if I could just go back a few years and just tell myself to believe in myself and believe that I was beautiful and worthy and smart and talented, I think I would have gotten to this point maybe a little bit sooner. But at the same time, you know, the journey is what shaped me to be who I am. So the only thing I could say is stop freaking worrying, relax, and just go with the flow and embrace every possible moment, because the only thing that matters is right now, this exact moment. Worrying about the future and the past isn't going to get you anywhere. You focus on what's in front of you and you will be a very happy and successful person.
Nice.
Yeah.
What a great way to end it.
Oh, so inspirational.
Before we wrap up, did you want to plug everything?
Oh, yeah.
Everything and anything you want.
Oh, yeah. Everything Anisha. Yeah, I mean, go check out EverythingAnisha.com. It's super awesome. I host a lot of workshops, audition workshops, casting workshops. And if you go to Everything Anisha on YouTube, there is a ton of videos about how to prepare for auditions, casting calls, how to reply to them properly, how to do your makeup for stuff. And yeah, you can check me out at Everything Anisha on Instagram and come join my journey of mental health and happiness and movement and makeup. And yeah, let's be friends. I would love that. Everything Anisha. You can't forget it because it has my name in it.
Everything Anisha Studios.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That
Address,
too.
all that. Where is that?
That is on St. Clair and Runnymede. So it's at 2391 St. Clair West. And yeah, it's going to be opening up bookings starting October 15th. So anybody who needs a space to hold a workshop, to hold, well, really anything, you're free to join. Everybody's welcome, all types of humans. And you can email me at Anisha@everythinganisha.com. Wow, my name's in that a lot, hey?
Anisha@everythinganisha.com.
Yeah, my name's in that twice. You can't forget it. Yeah, you can hit me up and we'll find something really awesome for you to create something beautiful. It's also open for photo shoots because it's freaking beautiful. It's really lovely. I did a great job decorating it, if I do say so myself. So there's a lot of opportunity for artists of all kinds, and I would love to have you a part of this journey. So please come and hang out. It's gonna be fun. Yay! I'm so excited. It's big news.
Well, that wraps up the episode. This was great. This was awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love the Dance Plug and I love Roy. So he's the gem of all gems. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Always a big fan of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. As always, be sure to continue the conversation with either myself or Anisha.
Definitely.
Privately, publicly, whatever.
Don't stop talking.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts. If you are a subscriber since day one, we absolutely appreciate you. And my name is Roy. This is the Unplugged podcast presented by the Dance Plug Toronto. And we will see you guys next week.
Bye. Peace.
Later.